Cedric Maxwell Podcast
is brought to you by PrizePicks.
All right, what's going on, everybody? John Zannis alongside Cedric Maxwell, another edition of the Cedric Maxwell Podcast. It's been a minute. We haven't talked with Max in a bit, so we got a lot to hit on today. The Cedric Maxwell Podcast, as you well know, is a proud member of the CLNS Media Network. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave reviews, do all that good stuff. Follow along, follow Max on Twitter, subscribe to the show, tell us what you think of it, leave comments, all that good stuff. We want to hear what you have to say, very much so. And of course, the show is brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports platform. Pick more, pick less, win up to 2,000 times your cash. All you have to do is enter code CLNS when you download the app. Play 5, get 50 in your account instantly. It is that easy. PrizePicks, run your game. Now, Max, let's get into it. Some interesting stuff has happened over the last couple of weeks, which is to say the Celtics franchise has been completely flipped on its head. 5 of the top 9 rotation players from last season will not take the court when the Celtics start the 25-26 season. That includes, of course, Jason Tatum, who is rehabbing an Achilles. Goodbye to Kristaps Porzingis. Goodbye to Drew Holiday. Goodbye to Luke Cornett. Goodbye to Al Horford. We weren't sure if they were going to keep one of those two guys. Actually, Al is still possible, but likely gone, as Brad Stevens has signified. And really not much behind it, Max. So I'll talk to you. I'm going to ask you now. You're going to be covering this team for all 82. What type of season can Celtics fans expect? Because I do think there's a little bit of people are a little shook at how big a bite this offseason took out of things. What type of team can we expect when these guys take the floor next year?
John, I think it's a bumpy road. I think if you look at it, these last couple of years have been tremendous with Tatum and Brown playing together, championships twinkling in everybody's eyes. This year, I think is obviously going to be different because you don't have the talent level. Now, let's speculate like everybody else, John. Let's do that. What happens? And I think Joe Mazzulla is going to love this year because
I do not.
I really do. I think because the challenges of this year, the players that he has, he's always loved having young players dive in, and I can see a lot of that happening. With some of the guys he's going to have out on the floor. And I think the combinations of defense he's going to try to run. And remember, Joe Mazzulla was scrappy when he was in college. And I think even when he's had his teams have been scrappy. And I think they're going to fight. But I think that their talent obviously isn't going to be what it's been in the last couple of years. But what happens, John, if in fact they don't play as well? Just speculate that they don't make the playoffs. So that's what we do. Let's speculate they don't make the playoffs. But you come in and you get a real good pick for next year, the year following year. And on top of that, you're bringing back Tatum and you have Brown coming back. Very much like what happened with San Antonio when David Robinson set out a complete year and didn't play. They got a great draft pick. Tim Duncan came in, and it was a foundation for something that was going to be beautiful for the years ahead.
It seems so simple when you say it like that, Max, yet I get a tremendous amount of pushback when we do our shows over on the Garden Report. I'm team tank, and that doesn't mean you can tank or you can do a hard reset. It's all semantics. People don't like to hear the T word because they think that means selling off all of your parts. And I'm still not convinced that they don't need to at some point or another at least entertain the possibility of moving on from Brown or Tatum and to get more financial flexibility down the road. But that's not this conversation. We're in the present, the here and the now. There's nothing wrong with losing next year because it will benefit you. Because really, and Brad Stevens has sent out all the signals, they are not focused on this year. You can tell internally the conversations they've had is we're gonna eat it this year. Doesn't mean they're going to try to lose. It just means they're not actively trying to win next year.
I don't like using that word actively.
Yeah.
I think they're actively going to try to win games.
Of course, the players are. The coaches.
Will they have the talent level to win those games you talk about?
Yeah.
You talk about Charman, probably is going to get a good year. He's going to be able to play. The younger players are going to be able to you get an opportunity to see what they have in the tank. It's going to be a bumpy road for you two. And I say this only because Cedric Maxwell was on that bumpy road. His first couple of years, never got to 500. First 2 years. Obviously, the third year, we got this stiff from Indiana named Larry Joe Bird. And you combine him, Cedric Maxwell, thinking smart ahead. You had Kevin McHale coming. You had Robert Parrish coming. You had at that time Dave Cowens, who was still there. So you had the remnants and the pieces. But what happened before Larry's team, before Larry got here, there were only basically about two guys survived that team. It was myself and Nate Archibald were the survivors of that particular team. Yeah. And that helped us down the line. So let's just go out and speculate. I think they're going to play hard. I don't know how many games they're going to win. But if they didn't make the playoffs, I don't think I would be mad. Yeah. And the only reason I say that is because if you're going to get a good draft pick and some good players going ahead, you have to get lucky. You have to pick well in the draft. Yeah. And what we've seen so far is Brad Stevens and Danny Ainge have picked very well in the draft if given those opportunities.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. When you look at the overall drafting of those guys, dating back to Danny, you know, some people get upset because you end up with an Olynyk over Giannis, or you miss it. You get Pritchard, you could have had Desmond Bane. You got Neesmith, you could have had somebody else. Maxey was out there. Doesn't matter. The point being is, it's an inexact science. You miss later. What you can say with certainty is, at least Brad's a different person, so we don't know how he's going to be. They nailed most of their picks at the top of the draft. And really, the success of the Celtics right now and the bones of their current, foundation was built on taking a step back in order to take a step forward. You got Jaylen Brown with the number 3 overall pick. Marcus Smart the year prior, before that with the number 6 overall pick. You had the number 1 overall pick. You traded down. You got Jason Tatum. It's not a bad thing. The turnaround was relatively quick. They only felt about 1 year of pain. This is 1 year of pain, Max. But the question, and I want to go back to it because I want to talk about your first 2 years. Let's stay on it real quick. You're on those losing teams. In that situation, as you said, they cleared everyone out. This isn't going to happen to this team. It's pretty clear they're trying to retain a core of players that include Jaylen Brown, Peyton Pritchard, Derek White, Jason Tatum, and then whatever else. Anyone else wants to come along for the ride, that's great. If they develop, as you said, a Shireman or a Walsh, or if Neemias Queta surprises, or you just keep him for big man depth, that's all great. Those guys, you're going to have carryovers, even if they do a partial makeover heading into the season where Tatum returns. But a lot of people we talk to, and a lot of people in the comments, when I mention, F next season, who cares? Play for the draft pick, develop your guys. Wins and losses don't matter. They talk about developing a bad culture, a losing culture. Is that something that you think is real? Which is to say, if Jaylen Brown and Derek White just lose all year long, they're the top dogs and they're the face of failure. Every night they go in, they give everything they got. People around them aren't good enough to be able to keep up. The losses start to pile up. At what point do the people who are going to continue to be around, how much does that affect them playing for a loser when all they've really ever done is win?
Well, that's the difference. You think of Brown, you think of Tatum. These guys have been in the playoffs. They've been in the finals. Almost every year they've been in the mix to possibly win it.
Yep.
If you are Jaylen Brown and you're on an island by yourself now, essentially, when you think about not having your other amigo, I'm not discounting Derek White. I'm not discounting Pritchard and those guys. I'm not. But when you think about those two, Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, one guy's missing. So if you're Brown right now, things that can happen to you. You can develop more of a leadership role. You can be more vocal. There's some things that you can grow as a player and a leader on this team that would help them out tremendously in the long run. And but I was on those teams, and it takes a toll on you, but I never won, whereas Brown has won. So guys who have won before and start losing, it sucked when I lost.
Yeah.
But it really will suck when you were a guy who's used to winning.
Yeah.
When you think how far you've gone, you think of the fan base that has been just crazy about the Celtics on the road. You bring more people in Charlotte or Atlanta or all these places that you go, you have that fan base. How are they going to feel about the possibility of taking a step back? And that's Brad's sale. That is Brad. That's his thing. His big sale is that. Joe Mazzulla has to coach him. Brad Stevens has to convince everybody that there's help on the way.
Yeah. And that's the thing. When you see light at the end of the tunnel, it is different. And that's why I don't understand why fans are so averse to the idea.
I didn't see a light.
No,
I saw a train coming.
Yeah.
That's all I saw. In my first years, all I could see was that looks mighty bright down there. No, it was a speeding train. My first 2 years, I never got above 500. Never even got to 500.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, in this case, you're right. You're selling a single year, right? You're selling a single year of it's gonna hurt a little, but we're gonna come back. We're gonna come back hard. So we know the benefits of potentially losing. And again, players don't try to lose. Coaches don't try to lose. Those guys are going to play their asses off. Joe Mazzulla is going to coach his ass off. They're going to go out there. They're going to compete. And again, you do have a core and a foundation. You've also got some weaker Eastern Conference teams where it's not like they're going to be getting blown out nightly, but they're definitely undermanned. If you look at this team, you're looking at a potential starting lineup, if the season were to start today, of Peyton Pritchard and Derek White as your guards. Great. That's fine. That makes sense. A lot of people thought Pritchard was going to have to step up in Holiday's absence, and it made it more palatable knowing that Holiday was likely to be gone. But then things start to get murky. You're obviously without Tatum, so you're probably starting Jaylen Brown. It means you're probably starting Sam Hauser and kind of playing two small forwards, or Brown is kind of a four-ish sort of guy because he's a little bit more physical. And then you're looking at the center position, and without Al, without Luke, and without KP, you're looking at Neemias Queta as your starting center at this moment in time. Coming off the bench, you're looking at Baylor Shireman, Jordan Walsh, and maybe Niang and Simons if Brad doesn't trade him, and reports are out there that he's actively trying to. That cupboard is bare. You talk about load managing. Poor Liam and Xander. If any of the stars sit out any of these games, Max, I would demand my money back if I'm those kids, because now there's nothing to see. Before, you could sit two stars and you'd still have 3 or 4 left. There's not much you could do, but that's the lineup. On paper, it's a little rough. I do believe that people are thinking, well, it's the Celtics. They don't lose. The Vegas over-under I've seen at about 42 wins. I don't know. I mean, gun to your head right now, is this a 40? Is this a better than 500 team?
I think there's someplace in the area, but to me, that is what you call no man's land. You and I talked about that before. Either you
worst place you can be
right in the middle, you almost got the girl, but then again, you almost lost the girl at the same time, and you'd have no other prospects. So I don't know how Brad is going to attack this thing. If you had Simons,
he's not.
And you move Simons on for a player, Niang for a player, for a potential pick down the line. I think that's what Brad is going to have to start dealing with.
Right.
What can he do?
But right now, he can't give them away. I mean, reports are they've been actively trying to trade Simon since they got him in order to, potentially save more cap and get completely out of the penalties, reset the whole tax, and be able to kind of deal and operate normally. And they can't find anybody. You're almost in a position here. And again, this was a little bit tricky with these guys, Max, but they lost the 2 picks on the Holiday deal because the medicals came back and Portland kind of reconfigured that deal. They have. Right now, you might be in a place where you might have to attach picks to these people to get rid of them. And that doesn't help you either because you're trying to consolidate assets, not give them away.
So what does that say about Holiday if the medicals came back and they weren't good? What does that say? Does that say you're right when you move them? Because a lot of people are very upset when you moved him. You look at his age. I'm not sure what the medicals were but the medicals had to be in a way that you convince somebody to say, okay, the trade is not going to happen unless we get this pick back and that pick back.
Yeah, I personally, I think if they're really bad, the deal gets completely undone. I think they just saw enough to be able to say, recognizing the Celtics were in a position of desperation and saying, I'm not giving you those picks anymore because we didn't like what we saw, and them deciding, well, crap, fine. We got to get off the money. So let's just do it.
What was that movie that was out? It was a football movie. It reminded me a lot of Danny Ainge, and who played in that movie?
Are you talking about Draft Day?
Yeah, Draft Day.
That was a silly
movie. And just, I mean, it was obviously fantasy, but man, what a great movie that was to talk about picks and moving and losing 2 picks and grabbing one back and this happened and that happened. This reminds me of that, where Brad's at now. When you think about this team, I mean, Brad has earned his money. He's done a great job. Now, the hard part happens for Brad. And the fact that you have all those talented guys that you have, KP leaving, and you're under the cat, you're moving beyond that apron. It's a tough road for a team that has competed over and over again for a championship.
Yeah, it is a tough road. And you mentioned Brad did a great job. I do want to talk about that a little bit as well. And also we want to definitely get into, what we're expecting out of Joe Mazzulla, but I didn't get the full answer. If the over-under is 42 wins, are you taking over or under?
I'm taking under.
Taking under.
I'm taking under.
I might as well.
I'm taking under. I think that it's going to be some days. It's going to be, and here's the thing that's really going to hurt when you think about the Celtics. All these teams that you've kicked their ass over the last.
Oh boy, they're coming.
Years, they're sitting there. They're what the Charlottes are pissed off still right now, and Charlotte has a pretty good young core of Atlanta Hawks who have really, were throwing in your
Detroit,
side.
Orlando,
those teams like that.
Philly, after all the years that you beat up on Philly,
mollywop them.
I love that word.
Brooklyn, another team that you've just kind of gone through and had your way. Those teams in the Eastern Conference right now are waiting for you. Cleveland, a team that you were right there with, and you felt like you could beat them. They're going to be good. Detroit, who you've handled all these last couple of years, that's going to be a really good team. They're going to be fun to watch. And how far did the Knicks go? So when you think about talent and where you stand in the Eastern Conference, although you said it's weak in the Eastern Conference, where are you in the number? If you said, where do you stand at right now? Who's better than you right now in the in the Atlantic right now?
Well, again,
Knicks,
I think
Knicks, possibly Philly. Who else? Who else is you're
well? Look,
right
it's not just you look at
Toronto.
If you look at the conference, If you look at the conference, Max, I think you'll clearly say Cleveland, New York, Detroit, Orlando, Atlanta. I think and Philly would be ahead if you're going to do the top 6. With Cleveland kind of in its own tier. I think the Celtics fall into that next wave. So they're kind of.
Let me ask you though, where's Indiana?
Well, Indiana, because of losing Turner and Halliburton now for the year, Indiana takes another big step back. They should have been conference favorites, and now they're going backwards. It's crazy how fast things turn. But you're looking at teams aren't unsure of who they are or what they're going to be next year. Celtics fall into that next wave, I think, from 7 and on, with Milwaukee and Indiana and Miami and maybe even Toronto trying to kind of figure itself out there a little bit, probably a little bit lower. The Bulls, not sure what they're doing either. So they're probably kind of in that 7 to 10 range, in my opinion, with the ability to leap as high as 5, but also to fall all the way out of the play-in. Like I think there's a range of outcomes here for the Celtics that they could surprise us. And I've said this on the Garden Report a million times, Max. What's the worst that happens? There's no help coming. Okay?
No. I can tell you the worst that happens for you. And I'm speaking for you right now, not for me, but for you. I'm speaking for you right now. That they somehow make the playoffs. That is, John is going, Holy shit. You've got to be kidding me. No, they're number 7 or 8 or 9 or whatever it is. You're just right now saying, oh, why? Why'd you win that last game in Indiana or versus somebody, Toronto? So I think I'm speaking for you on how you would feel. And you are a robust fan that believes this team needs to do one thing. We're not going to use the word, but the T word is right there in your mind. Whoa, I saw ML Carr do that. Whoa, we're winning. Hey, son, come here a minute. You're scoring too many points. Go sit on the bench real quick. It won't be like that. I'm sure it won't be like that, but I have seen it.
Oh, boy, does this team need ML Carr right now. I'll tell you that. That's what these guys need more than anything. What year was it? I can't remember which one it was. When the Celtics squeaked into the playoffs right at the end of the season. I think Jay Crowder hit, to win whatever game, and that pushed them just barely in. And I remember Danny Ainge's real-time reaction was like, oh, man, I did not want us to make the playoffs. So yeah, exactly. You're not nobody orchestrates it. Look, as I said, players and coaches don't tank. Management, they're not actively trying to lose, but they're not actively trying to win either. And they'll accept the results one way or the other. But like I said on the Garden Report, speaking for me, yeah, I would rather see them sink low, take a year of pain in order to build it back up fast rather than be stuck in the middle. I think that's a no-brainer. However, the flip side is if they do play well, play themselves into a top 4 seed or something and are better than everybody expects, that tells you a bunch of good things. Number one, Jaylen Brown did really well in the role as the alpha without Tatum alongside. Derek White probably took a leap forward as a more depended upon offensive weapon.
Kata became better.
Kata became a serviceable big. Yeah.
I hear you. That's what I get. That. Kata became better in your mind?
Yeah, I love it. And Peyton Pritchard all of a sudden proved that he's a legit starting NBA player and not just a guy getting garbage points off a bench. All of those things would have to happen. And then you'd have to be talking about a leap for Hauser, a leap for Shireman. Jordan Walsh might have to show that he can play. Maybe the new kid, Ugo, jumps into the rotation, gives you minutes. If those things happen, arrow's pointing up anyway. You don't have to worry about it as much. But if you lose, you very much off of that. Because you realize we don't have that much to build with. I do need some new building blocks to go along with the established guys that I have. So I think it's a win-win, honestly, if you're a Celtics fan here. If you can just reset your thinking a little bit on what you expect from this team normally and just view it through a different lens. So that's, I think, where they're at right now. We're going to continue on because I do want to talk about Brad. You mentioned him, and I do want to talk about Joe Mazzulla as well. But first, we're going to hear from our friends over at PrizePicks. The Cedric Maxwell Podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks, the #1 daily fantasy sports app in all of North America. PrizePicks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. Pick more or less on at least 2 players to win up to 2,000 times your cash. How do you play? That's simple. You can pick one sport, cross sports, doesn't matter. Pick more or less on any of the stats offered on the platform, and you can pick 2, 3, 4, doesn't matter. It's that simple. For me personally, I like to settle in on one game, see what's going on. That way I can track it, players on both sides, and that's how I like to make my selections, but you can play however you want. The most important thing for you to do is download that app and use the code CLNS. That's code CLNS. And you get 50 put into your account as soon as you play 5. All you have to do is play 5, get 50 when you use the code CLNS. In addition to that special offer, there's a lot of other great features on PrizePicks. Taco Tuesday, where you get a discounted stat or a discounted player. Freaky Friday, lots of free squares, which basically just allows you to insert something into your lineup, which is almost certain to hit. Makes it that much easier to win your cash. So once again, download that app today. Use code CLNS, play 5, and get 50 instantly in your account. Once again, download the app, code CLNS, get 50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Max, we talked about Brad and the job he's done, and I do think the faith that fans have in him in this role, which is something that's new to him, just 3 years into it. It is really interesting when you talk about, a rookie head coach and a rookie GM, win you a title in year 2. And everything that Brad does, everybody seems to be extremely pleased. In Brad, we trust. You hear that a lot. And there was some pain this offseason for sure. They knew it was coming, but I've never seen Brad look so shook as he did when he had to field questions after having traded away Holiday and Porzingis. Now with the reports that they can't trade away Simons, that they didn't get the 2 picks back for the Holiday thing, are we rethinking how this offseason has gone so far? Because it looks to me like they just took a beating and didn't get anything really back in return. And I'm not going to say Brad did bad.
The apron was.
We know that, but they shouldn't have been surprised by it.
Yeah, I think that they got under the apron. That was the first thing you looked at. Then after that, you're saying right now, and I'm like you looked at those Portland picks, going, man, forget these Portland picks. These things can really be good, and you may be able to move those things and trade them, or it might be a great pick. I watched a pick many years ago when I played. And the Celtics traded away at that time one of my best friends, Gerald Henderson. Traded him to Seattle. And once he got to Seattle, that pick turned into the number 2 pick in the draft. And a young man named Len Bias. We know the tragedy of that, but a young man named Len Bias came on board, and probably the Celtics have been set back since then. They would have probably made a full-fledged run at winning another championship if Len Bias had ever played. The tragedy, we all know, we all feel terrible about it. But from a basketball standpoint, this team was about to take another step. They had just won the championship. Larry Bird was at his powers. Kevin McHale was at his powers. Robert Parrish, and you bring in probably arguably one of the most talented guys that people always said was like Michael Jordan, was like Jordan, that was coming to your franchise. And you were only going to take steps up, and you were able to let Larry Bird, let Kevin McHale get rest, because you're going to have Len Bias coming into play. So I've seen those picks personally, and I've seen how they worked over the years. And for you to lose one with the Holiday pick, the Holiday trade, that could be pretty devastating.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And it's weird getting shipped out of like a good situation, as Gerald did, as you did, into a situation that isn't quite as good. Porzingis seems pretty happy though down in Atlanta, but he seems like he's going to be happy wherever he goes. And Atlanta's actually looking like they're a team on the rise there. So he had a good landing spot. Portland with Holiday, reports are that he's not super happy with that destination. So, definitely tough there. You mentioned Bias. I mean, look,
stay there though. How can he stay there? I don't understand how. I only understand how. First of all, how does he go back to where he was from? You send him away and then you get him back to keep him,
right,
or to move him.
I don't quite understand what Portland's doing, but thankfully this isn't a Portland podcast, because I don't have to worry about what they're thinking over there. We're just worried about, what's going on here with the Celtics. So I want to revisit the Brad thing. You mentioned the second apron, and I get it. And, and I'm not looking for a particular answer here. I just think it begs the question. They knew the apron was coming. They knew it was likely that they were going to have to move on from these guys. I don't know if they knew that they were going to get that little for them, or that it was going to be that hard to trade them, or that when they traded for things, they were going to have a difficult time getting rid of those things either. I do believe the plan was to trade and to save money. And then if you get anything, or you have to take contracts back, try to trade those down and see if you can just keep pairing salary to the point that you're out of jail. And they're not. And in fact, with their recent moves, they've kind of ticked just back up over that second apron. Again, they don't have to get under it until the end of the season to not incur the repeater tax and the other penalties that come alongside it. But they're actually still technically just a hair over. So I feel like cost cutting is coming, but they can't do. They're struggling to do it. So is it possible Brad misread Not that they went for it. They took a shot. They shot their shot and they won. They won a title. Everyone's happy for that. Is it possible they misread just how difficult it was going to be to get themselves out of jail?
I don't think that you can predict what trades might be or moves are going to be.
Well,
made.
You can't, but that's the job.
And even more so when you think about having guys who are injured. Because just say Porzingis was healthy and you were able to move him. You were able to get something really good for him coming back your way. So I don't think he misread it. I think just the tea leaves kind of fell the way they have with this team. And the tea leaves were that the team was on the verge of possibly winning the championship. People talked about him. And then all of a sudden you get your best player gets hurt and you just start looking at your aprons and all. It's just like everything that could go bad last year went bad. Everything from your star player being hurt to the aprons to trying to get under the tech. Everything that could go bad went bad, except here's the thing, and this is where you and I are kind of in probably different views of it. I love the fact that Joe Mazzulla is here. I love Joe Mazzulla as a coach right now because he's a fighter. And he's going to have these guys playing balls to the wall, and he's going to get up in their jocks and coach his ass off. I think we're going to see the best version of Joe Mazzulla this year.
Well, that's where I was going to ask, and I'm curious why you think that, because I agree with Joe being a fighter. I agree with Joe being on top of people. I agree with Joe being very demanding. But the reality of the Joe Mazzulla coaching situation is he stepped into a ready-made team with established veterans who knew what they were doing already, that had just come off of a finals appearance. And he got them back to one, and this team has been in contention every single second he's been a coach. This is a totally different experience here. So Brad admitted it himself. They needed another voice. I wasn't reaching these guys. He was struggling to coach these players once they became stars or, at this level. He had a tough time with it. And Joe did not. Joe excelled at it. But Joe's now being asked to do something completely different. And again, you mentioned likes the young kids. I do have to counter with that. We had Baylor Shireman on the Garden Report, and he said the first thing Joe told him is, I hate rookies. And
what you say and what you do are completely different. Joe,
but he doesn't he wants people to get it.
What we saw in Shireman. Shireman got more time really than Walsh, didn't he? Shireman showed
near the end of the year
than Walsh did.
Yeah.
Everybody was
by the end of the year. Yeah.
Walsh was going to take that next step, go up that ladder. But what you saw was Shireman was better suited in the minutes that he played than Walsh and was more productive. So I think that's Joe can say that. I don't like rookies, but everybody. Joe is going to needle whoever it is. Joe is the same person that when you had the who was it? The king and it was the prince and the princess there. And they said, how you feel about the royal family? He said, who you talking about? Mary, Paul, and just things from Bible verses. Joe is just like that. That's who Joe is as a person. And one thing that Joe said to me, and this is, I'll let you in on it. Joe was somewhat, it was a problem with Joe when he started thinking about my teams during the 80s, because he said, pretty much it was unfair to Tatum and Brown to be compared to Bird and McHale and Parrish and Russell, because this franchise has set such a standard that they could never live beyond those guys. I don't care how good Tatum becomes. Will Tatum ever be the best player in Celtic history?
No.
That was a question. Okay. So he will never be viewed as the best player in Celtic history. But his skill set puts him in a stratosphere by himself.
Sure.
Is Tatum better than John Havlicek? Yeah. Yeah, with his skill set, things he's able to do, his quickness, Where's he at when it comes to
Max? You just upset every 60 plus year old dude in Boston by saying
and
that.
Here's the thing. I really don't give a damn because all the 60 guys talk about, they didn't play with John Havlicek. I did. And I played with Larry Bird. And I've had the chance to watch Tatum over and over again. But that's the point I'm making. That Joe Mazzulla, it looks at that sometimes as an issue with the people who live in the past right now and don't give Tatum and Brown the respect that they should be that they should get.
Hang on one second. I got Bob Ryan calling me right now. Somehow he already caught wind of this. He's not happy.
Well, not happy. You tell me why I'm pissing these people off. You tell me. Tell me why I'm pissing them off.
You're not. As I said, some things are held sacred, and to men of a certain age, John Havlicek is God. And I hear more about John Havlicek and the impossible dream Red Sox of '67 than like people who actually, it doesn't matter. But yeah, they are. John Havlicek is revered. So yeah, when you say Tatum's ahead of him, that'll ruffle some feathers. But you're right. I mean, you're right.
I played with John. I know John's skill set. He was an older player, obviously, at that time. Yeah. But I'm looking at Tatum. Tatum's ability to create for other people, his foot speed, his height, his ability to shoot the ball. John wasn't there. John did not have that skill set when you think about who John could be and what John could do on the floor. John was a great defender, though. He was a great defender, and that's another area that Tatum has to build on. But from a skill standpoint, Jason Tatum, it has to be one of the top 3 players maybe to ever play with the Celtics.
It's impossible if you've taken us down this road for me not to ask. And I will say Tatum actually is, Tatum, I think, is an outstanding defender and it should be getting more due. And he should have gotten Defensive Player of the Year votes. He should have gotten all defense votes as well. People aren't paying attention to how good he's become defensively. I think it's one of his stronger attributes, actually. But you're mentioning Tatum as a potential top 3. I know you've done this in some form or another, but let's go. Give me your all-time 5, and you place them in positions, not just best 5.
Russell, Bird. Now I'm trying to see a way to keep Tatum out of that. Russell, Bird, Tatum.
Yep.
Paul Pierce. And it's just hard for me to keep Bob Cousy out of it, regardless.
Cousy.
So, yeah, I know you're going, Cousy, yeah. Now, you want to kill a bunch of people who in the 90s? Why don't you go ahead and stick a fork in Cousy? Let me see what you'll say then. I know people walk up to me right now. I'm from Worcester, and I knew Bob Cousy. And I saw Cousy play during the 50s and the 60s and the. You can't tell me about Bob. So yeah, that's the way I'm gonna go. But I'm gonna have Jason Tatum in the top 3.
Yeah, that's fair. And again, look, the Cousy argument is always interesting because it just comes at a time where everything was really funky with the NBA. It's not integrated. It's it's still kind of a newish sport. Nobody could dribble with their left hand. No one could shoot the ball really that well, but Cousy was a wizard and definitely deserves his due. The only other conversation you can have in and around the point guard position is either Rondo, or potentially, in terms of talent alone, even though he never put his mark on the franchise and he has no legacy. And if I say his name, the most talented point guard who's ever played for the Celtics is clearly Kyrie Irving, but he wasn't here long enough and he doesn't make the list. Sorry. I got to put KG in there somewhere, babe. Sorry. It's hard for me to leave KG out.
Yeah,
but that's okay.
The KG is hard to leave out, but when I think about it, if I say Russell, sure, right? Bird, sure, right?
Yeah.
Tatum, sure, right? Now, do you want to put KG in there? Do you want to put Paul Pierce in there?
You want to upset people? You want me to upset people?
Yeah, go ahead and put Ray Allen in there.
I'm putting KG in as the small ball 5 and bringing Russell off the bench.
Woo! Man, you just destroyed the Cedric Maxwell podcast.
That's it for you.
You just, folks, I'm out of here.
Ahmed, cue the friggin' TNT dynamite effect.
Sure whatever's in that white thing that you were drinking a minute ago.
Oh man, hold on.
We're gonna have to get you tested right now. Oh my God, you're taking Russell out and bringing Russell off the bench and putting Kevin in as a center.
Yeah, don't tell Bob. Bob, that's Bob again. Hold on, I gotta send this to voicemail. Yeah, that's a tough one. It's a tough one. Sorry guys. Sorry everybody. I'll see your Havlicek and I'll raise you. You were talking about Joe. I want to get back to Joe because we got sidetracked a little bit. One thing I found curious, I'm going to play a soundbite here for Brad Stevens because we've been trying to figure out what's going on with Joe Mazzulla because it is an interesting situation, right? Like Joe, who has won a title, obviously here in year one, that meltdown in Miami. I am very curious whether or not Joe Mazzulla would have fully survived if they got swept against an 8 seed in the conference finals in year one. If they would have said, we grabbed the wrong guy, we did it under duress, it was an emergency, we needed a coach, we fired Ime right when the season began, Joe's not the guy and move on. I'm not saying they would have, but I think that was possible. They win a title, he's king of the world. You come back next year again, you kind of get disappointed against a weaker team. So it's another bit of a disappointment, but some beyond their control. You're heading into next year and you don't really know what you have and you don't know when you're going to be necessarily good again or a title contender again. Now, Mazzulla's contract situation is interesting because we don't fully know it. And we've been asking about it at the press conferences, including Bobby, who's poked at Brad a couple of times in the last 2 pressers for clarification on what's going on. First, John Corrales did it and Bobby followed up last time. Here's Bobby's question where Brad had revealed that Joe's here for multiple years, but he won't give any specifics and he won't talk about extension. Here's that question and answer right here.
I want to clarify something you said last time. You said Joe has multiple years left on his contract.
That's right.
And how big of a priority is possibly coming to an extension with him, coming to something long-term this summer?
We'd love to have Joe here for a long time.
So it is. Brad said this now twice. We have him for multiple years. We'd love to have him forever. We'd love to have him here a long time. What's not clear is how long is multiple years and whether or not Joe has any control over that. Now, it's believed he had signed a 3-year extension in his first year, and this would have been the last year, but said multiple years. It's led some to speculate, and Michael Hawley kind of said it on NBC Sports Boston, that he thinks it's a team option potentially for next season, which means Joe technically could be in the final year of a deal where the Celtics hold all the cards. Now, the question as to whether or not they're going to extend him, again, Brad's not going to say, yeah, we're going to, or no, we're not going to, but it is interesting. If Joe Mazzulla enters this year without a contract extension, that to me is a little curious. I wonder why that would be. I don't know if the Celtics are kind of waiting to see what I had talked to you about before, Max, which is how can he handle something else? You know, we gave him the good stuff. How's he going to handle this?
Yeah, well, if you're the Celtics right now, you're not in a rush because you're saying right now we have him. It's our option. So they do have all the cards in their hands. So if you're them, why not wait? Why not wait to see what happens? Let's see where the cookie crumbles. Yeah. I think that's what you do, and you make a decision based on how he dealt with the younger players, how the players played for him. We've seen many players and many coaches over the years where players have quit on coaches. And one thing you know, when players quit on the coach is going to be the guy who's going. I don't think they're going to do that.
That's the thing.
I think that they love Joe. Joe is very well respected by his players. He makes life easy for them. And one of the things like shoot around. Celtics don't have to go to shoot around most of the time on the road. What they'll do, they'll go right in the hotel, come down in the flip-flops, look at some film, and then go back and go to sleep. Whereas some teams go over to the arenas and they shoot and they walk through the plays. And sometimes it's a waste of time, which I always feel it's a waste of time with your mind and your legs. So he has made it really, really very good for the players in the way he handles them and what he expects of them.
Yeah, he does for sure. But again, it's how's it gonna play? As you mentioned earlier, like we talked about the culture and what it was like when you were on those losing teams. It's there. Sometimes it's hard to get that loser stank off of you, right? Like because things come out. Like everyone, humans. It's not just basketball or sports. At your best, you're great. You're funny. You're engaging. You're generous. You have time to give. When everything's going to shit, all of a sudden you're a frazzled mess and you're short with people and you're worried that I don't have enough money to, buy milk at the end of the day. And like you get tighter and everything gets tougher.
I don't think Joe is worried about
Joe's not worried about that, but you start worrying about the losses pile up. You start worrying about job security. You go into this season without an extension or without long-term security, and they don't give you the tools to have a successful team. And the mission is develop the younger guys. And you're like, screw that. I'm coaching for my life here. There might be weird and different vibes. All of a sudden, you're playing Jaylen Brown 42 minutes a game. We're speculating here, but I do think there's danger in letting somebody dangle. And again, maybe this is incorrect. Maybe Joe has multiple years well beyond this one, and it's not a concern. But if it's anything shorter, if the Celtics control an option for next year, and he goes into this season knowing it's a worse team, knowing that the management hasn't prioritized winning this year, but also knowing that's going to look bad if you lose, like. If this turns into a 21-win team, that's all. You know what I mean? There's some ugly things that can happen. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but there's definitely a little bit of risk involved. Not endorsing your coach through a bridge period of time.
Watch how this goes. If they win 21 games, John Zannis is having a freaking party with cakes and candles. He is having the biggest freaking party you want to see. So yeah, there's a flip side to that you look at. If John Zannis said 21 and you were looking at one of the top 5 picks in the NBA and Tatum and Brown coming back, oh my God, you would have a shit storm in your head right now with your thought process.
I'm trying to pretend I'm not rooting really hard for that, but I am rooting hard for that to happen. Because I want that time. I want the pick. David Robinson, we saw it in the NFL. Peyton Manning with his neck situation, and the Colts, which were a good team, tanked, and all of a sudden they get Andrew Luck just dumped on their lap. Like, the Len Bias situation, again, that was pre-lottery, and that's kind of one of the reasons you had to do it. You get that pick, and oh my God, you just reload with a superstar. That's found money. If you add to Tatum and Brown, AJ, the kid from Brockton, are you freaking kidding me? There's your Len Bias joining the big three, in 86 moment. Like, okay, let's freaking go. But again, getting that bad or getting the lottery luck and all of those things, nothing is assured. But yes, oh my God, absolutely. That's what
Why don't you go someplace and get some freaking candles right now, okay? Because all you need right now is some matches. You're talking about if this happened, we're not saying.
Oh, I'm an arsonist here. I want to set it all on fire.
They're going to go with. They're going to say arson has happened with the Cedric Maxwell podcast because somebody gaslit this whole thing. I believe that this team is going to be okay. I think they're going to do all right. But what makes me afraid is exactly that they do all right, that they land up in the middle and not able to be bad enough to get a good pick and not good enough to go forward in the playoffs. Although you're going to take a great leap when you think about Tatum coming back. And are we sure right now that Tatum is coming back next year?
No, come on. This is silly. This is another thing that people are crazy.
That's why we should talk about it. But that's what people keep speculating. There was some the other day I saw him in a swimming pool, walking in a pool, exercising. People are speculating about all kind of stuff. My broadcast partner, Sean Grandy, said, hey, I think he's going to come back in April. And I'm like, why? Why would he come back in April? Why would he come back Why we come back in late April to play a couple of games? No, I don't see him back at all this year. Now, let me make sure I say this. This came from the lady at the post office today. She said to me, "Isn't it unusual, Mr. Maxwell, that those guys who wore number 0 all had the Achilles torn?" I was like, wow. She said, yeah, you think about it. Jason Tatum gets it. Dame gets it. Halliburton. I said, Halliburton wears number 0? She said, yeah. I said, damn, I didn't even know. But I said, man, that is really kind of weird, though, that 3 top players that wore the number 0, all of a sudden they get the same injury.
Yeah, go check on Robert. Make sure he's okay. I know he was a 00, but still, I hope nothing's happened to him. So this is a perfect segue kind of into our last topic here. And again, I do think that it's fan fiction. It's what if they're pretty good? What if they're better than we think? And then Tatum comes in and saves them. And then they trade Simons for something. And all of a sudden I think Brad has, you don't have to read too hard between the lines. Brad has signaled a couple of things in the media availabilities he's done. They're trying to pair payroll. They're not really worried or prioritizing this season clearly at all. They've asked a bunch of times whether there's more moves coming, and he said, we got good players here, meaning this is what we're going to get. He was asked about the big man rotation, and he basically said, yeah, it looks pretty friggin' bad on paper, so I guess it's up to them to prove that they're better than that. He knows full well what he's done and what's happening right now, and he's mentioned Tatum's in a boot, and he's used the phrase prioritizing health. And prioritizing health is a euphemism for this. We're putting this friggin' guy in bubble wrap to make sure that when we're going to be good again, or when we have a chance to be good again, he's fully ready. The last thing in the world we're doing is bringing him back. The term prioritizing health, he said it multiple times. That means we are not bringing him back next year under any circumstances. That's what I believe. So that's that. But you mentioned Achilles. Hard not to talk about the other guy you just mentioned, which of course is Dame Lillard. Speculation that he's interested. The Celtics are interested. Maybe they bring him in. He gets bought out in a really weird maneuver by the Bucks. You don't see anything like this happen ever, and could probably be had for cheap. Whether or not he signs here, really beside the point. Again, let's just talk as fans. As someone who follows the Celtics, watches the Celtics, talks about the Celtics. Do you think bringing Damian Lillard on board at his age to this team, coming off the Achilles injury for next season, is a good thing, or would you take a pass?
I think it would be a great thing. And let me tell you why I think it'd be a great thing. There was a guy I played with, his name was Nate Archibald. Came off of 2 Achilles injuries. Came back, invented himself into an all-star point guard again after those injuries. Dame Lillard still has a lot in the tank. And I believe that if you were able to get him, and just say if he came on board, you get him for small money on the dollar now. He comes in with the Celtics. You have Brown, you have Tatum, you have him. I think it's and you put Pritchard maybe back on the bench. You have Dame start, and you have Derek White start. I like that combination of guys. Since we're playing this whole big game of fantasy right now, why not play it in the best way? So I would love Damian Lillard coming into the fold. Name I've heard, Time Lord, Rob Williams. People have been talking about him possibly coming back. Didn't work out well for him in Portland. Well, he'd be a guy that you'd be interested in bringing back into the fold.
I want to adopt him. So yeah, I mean, if Rob Williams is around, I want Rob.
Okay.
Yeah, but you don't have to do much convincing. I don't care if Rob Williams has literally. I want Rob back. It's just good vibes and good karma. Yeah, I take that. The Lillard thing, I think my thoughts, I've expressed them clearly on the Garden Report. I don't want to litter your pod with too many of them. I am afraid it's a false sense of hope and security that you're okay, rather than addressing actual needs. Kind of hanging your hopes on a guy who is a bit of a me guy, needs his shots, adding him to Tatum and Brown, coming off an injury. I don't want them to think like we're good now. We got Lillard. I'd rather them have an eye on getting younger and more athletic and cheaper. And I know he would be cheap, and figure out how they want to go forward long-term, as opposed to a 1-year Band-Aid. But again, I understand the counter, which is, what's the worst thing that happens? He signs for league minimum and he stinks, and you buy him out, or you cut him, or you drop him. I get it.
I just keep saying that whole thing in my mind, Nate Archibald. I saw Nate Archibald come off with 2 Achilles injuries. One, I think still the only player right now to lead the league in assists and points. And then had 2 Achilles injuries, came from Buffalo to Boston, and had ballooned up over 215 pounds. I saw him in these sweat vests working his ass off, and then came back and became a multi-year all-star. So when you have that DNA, and that's what I look at, the DNA from a guy like Dame Lillard. I've always loved him as a player. I would love him more on the cheaper side, and then playing a subservient role to those 2 guys we talked before, in Brown and Tatum.
Yeah, I feel like that's the thing you add to a fully baked team, as opposed to the thing you add to a team that's trying to recapture its identity. Like, I feel like Dame would have been added to like last year's team, a type of team like that, which is like, hells yeah, bring him on. We're on our way to a title here.
Was that like when you brought Shaq in?
Yeah, I mean, again, that team was still scraping and scrapping, trying to figure out if they could be something or somebody. So, and Shaq is clearly at the tail end at that point, and not the Shaq that they thought. It's just so funny to me that he was here. That's such an interesting era in Celtics basketball history. But yeah, anyway, always a pleasure chatting with Max, and always a pleasure, having you guys here listening, hanging out with us. As we said, you can always check out the Cedric Maxwell podcast over on the CLNS Media Network. Subscribe to our YouTube channels there. Turn on your notifications every time a video pops up. You will be notified, not just Max, but all sorts of other great stuff, including Bob Ryan, Jeff Goodman, Gary Tangway. You've got the Celtics Beat podcast with Adam Kaufman and Evan Valenti. You've got the Big 3 podcast with Sherrod Blakely, Kwani Lewis, and Gary Washburn. Us over on the Garden Report, in addition to Noah Dalzell, her own podcast there. And if I've missed something, I apologize. But again, tons of great content. And also, if you like Patriots, subscribe to our Patriots Press Pass YouTube channel. Also, because training camp 2 weeks away, and we are going to hit the ground running full tilt on a team that has some interest, some intrigue, and a little bit of
while we're here,
a little bit of promise.
So all right, tell me, where did the Patriots end up? How many games they win?
Everyone hates me, Max.
No, I don't care about. I'm just asking. You're talking to me right now. You're not talking to anybody else.
I know.
How many games do you think the Patriots will win?
I have them in the 7 to 9 range. I think some people have gotten out over their skis a little bit, saying 11 wins and possibly getting into the playoffs. My colleague and one of my favorite guys in the world, and one of the most enthusiastic and intelligent Patriots reporters on the beat, Taylor Kyles, has them at 13 wins. And I don't want to. He's young. I'm going to let him.
Out over his skis. Was he driving? Is he driving a moped coming down the mountain? What the hell is he talking about? 13.
It's getting a little out of hand. Okay. My true belief in a bubble, if we're going to have our little Pats moment, I'll give it to you right now. My belief is that there's reason for optimism, because I think Drake May is going to be amazing. So I think everybody who's geeked up about that has a reason to. I think they went from the worst receivers and the worst line in the league by far to a bad line and bad receivers, but better than last year. I think they upgraded lots of different places, but they were so bad that they were below replacement level. And I think they're at or slightly above replacement level. They're still lacking in terms of playmakers and star power. So there's really only so far you can get. I think the coaching situation will be better. And I think there's some weak teams out there that they can find a way to get themselves to 6 and 7, maybe 8 wins. But I think it's crazy. They need more juice. They got to get more guys. They need more guys. They're on the right path.
Look like,
but they need more.
Like all the Boston teams right now need more juice.
They need more
juice.
Just
saying, all the Boston teams, all of them.
Yeah. I mean, amazingly, the Red Sox are the team with the most juice right now, because they have young kids playing at the big league level. That's what you want. That's my favorite thing. You want to talk about rebuilds. The best thing when you do that is to it's not the worst thing to go all the way down, amass young stars and then watch them grow. And, that's how you got here with the current team, with the Celtics, with Tatum and Brown, even though they really only had to kind of dip for about a year there because Brad was pulling, rabbits out of his hat with a team that didn't have the best roster, getting the most out of those guys. So they were really competitive, even maybe they shouldn't have been. But you're starting to add, what's Brown going to be like? What's Tatum going to be like? Ooh, you start to, and then you add established pieces to it, and it gets really interesting. All of a sudden, Kyrie wants to play with these guys. That's how it gets there. In another year, maybe a big alpha receiver wants to play with Drake May. Now we're talking. Things start to change. They haven't gotten there yet. Maybe they can, but there's reason to be optimistic after maybe two of the worst years in Patriots history over the last year of Belichick and year one of Mayo. That's as dark as it gets. And I've lived through 1 in 15 seasons as well, as many others have also. There was nothing to look forward to. At least there's something to look forward to this year. So check that out. We're excited about that. We're excited about all of it. The start of Celtics season. And also we're excited about the start of Summer League. Bobby and Noah are down there for CLNS. They're going to be covering those games. We'll get a look at some of the kids. We'll be doing garden reports after the show, so definitely check those out as well. And we will see you next week on the Cedric Maxwell Podcast. Until then, take care.